And another episode of Stairway to Cleveland. Here we are.
Where?
We are in the smeltering third floor of Willoughby Coal.
Ooh.
I know.
The heat is scary.
The heat is very scary.
Well, it was snowing yesterday, but it's Northeast Ohio, so today it's 84.
Exactly. Just enough to screw with all our sinuses.
No, they're bad.
Anyway, our very special guest tonight.
Extremely special guest.
Some of you may recognize her. She's been on TV, on the radio, on so many different formats.
She's everywhere.
She's an author, a paranormal.
Get around, okay? Yes, I get around.
I didn't mean it like that. But we did find out something new.
Author, paranormal investigator, researcher, public speaker, wife and mother, and one half of the Haunted Housewives.
That's right.
And one cool kid.
This is Theresa Argie, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks.
We're right here in Willoughby Coal, which is probably one of the most notable haunted areas in greater Cleveland, northeastern Ohio, maybe even in the country.
This is the coolest place in Northeast Ohio.
Not temperature-wise.
No, not temperature-wise. No, absolutely not. Not tonight, at least.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. This is probably the most haunted place in Northeast Ohio. One of the most haunted places in the United States, in my opinion. And I wrote a book about it because I said it's one of the most haunted places. Therefore, it is.
See, it's on paper. Right here is the book.
It is.
America's Most Haunted. The Secrets of Famous Paranormal Places.
Famous, except Willoughby Coal wasn't famous until we put it in the book.
Now it's very famous. I mean, it's so famous they even built a bar in front called Spirits.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good place from what I hear.
The Haunted Housewives take credit for that.
They should.
Kathy did a lot to really bring this area some notoriety when it comes to not just the hauntings, but the history of Willoughby. And this building is such an iconic place for the people of Willoughby and people in Lake County. And she knew that place has got to be haunted. It's just such a cool aesthetic. And she's the one who came in and got the history and the research and found out the story of it. So it's because of her initial curiosity that she started the Willoughby Ghost Walk, and the Haunted Housewives made this kind of their home spot. So I'd like to take the credit, but it's really Kathy.
She's talking about her partner, Kathy Weber, who couldn't be here tonight because
she's on baby watch. She's about to be a grandma again, and she's in the hospital right now waiting for baby Lucia to be born.
Ooh,
so
how exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm really jealous.
So you're going to speak for both of you tonight.
I will be speaking.
She's here in spirit.
She certainly is.
Get it? Haunted.
She better not be at Spirits.
Right. Let's look out the window and see. We got Rick. How you doing tonight, Rick?
I'm okay, man. What's up?
Excited as always. Well, let's talk about you. Let's start with you. What got you into the paranormal and things of that nature?
So like a lot of people who are interested in the paranormal, my curiosity started at a young age. It wasn't one experience that got me into this. For me, it was something that I just seemed to be born with, this curiosity. My grandfather on my mother's side was also into weird stuff, so he would always be showing me books and magazines and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, really cool. No, he's showing me this really cool stuff. And then the Irish love to tell stories. So ghost stories are really big in the Irish culture. And maybe that's why the stories came out.
Right.
But I would hear these awesome ghost stories. Like my relatives would tell me these crazy Irish Gothic ghost stories. And I thought they were so cool. But then they would preface them with, you know, there's no ghost but the Holy Ghost. So there's no such thing as ghosts.
Saving themselves.
But you just told me these great stories. So when I was younger, I would find anything I could on the paranormal, on ghost stories, on lore, myths, anything weird or spooky, and I would devour them at the library. I would love to have these books, and my grandfather would be giving me articles and things like that. Absolutely loved it. But as soon as my father would see the books I was bringing home from the library, I would get in big trouble, and I'd be marched up to the library to return the books, and I would be sent to confession. So as embarrassing as it was, and then the librarians were told, do not give Theresa Gallagher any of these books on ghosts, werewolves, anything. So they weren't allowed to let me even check them out. So I would just read them at the library. No, I wasn't. It's terrible. So that just made me more interested, of course.
Yeah.
Like any student,
Yeah,
you
the
tell me I
forbidden
can't.
fruit.
You can't tell me I can't do it. I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
But back then, and I am dating myself. This was like '70s, early '70s. You didn't talk about it. It wasn't accepted, and people thought you were weird. And I was the weird kid. I was lucky enough to have a friend named Tina who lived around the block. She was weird like me. So we got into doing this stuff, and her parents were a little more open. So we would read the books over there, and we would find places that looked interesting, we thought were haunted. So we did all that stuff as younger kids. And then fast forward, I'm now a young adult, and there's this thing called reality television.
Oh, yes.
And because of reality television, you could have shows like Ghost Hunters. And I remember when Ghost Hunters first came on, and my husband told me, there's a show coming on about these plumbers that ghost hunt like you. And I'm like, really? I couldn't believe it. And sure enough, there was. And they really opened the door. So say what you will about reality TV and the ghost shows, which have changed drastically since they've been out.
Absolutely.
But they really did open the door. And even like Ghost Adventures with Zach Baggins, and people have opinions about him.
They do.
And I've had mine, which have changed.
Okay.
But his original documentary is really, really good.
House or whatever.
Yeah, it was really, really good, where they captured some footage that I can understand why they were given their own show.
Sure.
And they're still on. I think they're in like 17 seasons.
Yeah, they're on Discover Plus or something now. They're not
Right.
even on their regular channel.
They don't need to be, yeah.
No.
They're
I actually
doing really
visited
well.
this haunted museum when I was in Vegas.
It's crazy. I was there
It is.
like a year and a half
But
ago.
it mixes a lot of cheese with a lot of the cool stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because they had like, a little person come out of the doll room and chase people, and some
They
of the
did?
stuff. Yeah.
Not when I was there.
Yeah.
They missed out on that.
So it was kind of neat, and it was kind of really messed up. A lot of the stuff that was in there, some of the like serial killer stuff,
like the Ed Gein
yes,
pot,
the pot
where he would cook people's skins. And,
yes, and then
yeah.
the mattress with the guy with the. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. Yeah. And
they had the steps from the Hell House in
Yes.
there. I was the only one to go in there by myself because everybody else had already saw it and left. And I was lagging behind, so I went in there by myself, and it kind of freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie.
I thought it was pretty cool. It
Well,
was really interesting.
That's how most scary movies are. The one person who left.
I know. I thought
The
it was the
idiot who
one.
stayed behind.
The idiot
Yeah.
that wasn't keeping up with everybody else.
We went to Vegas for our 20th anniversary, my husband and I, and we got remarried there by Elvis. It was really cool.
Little
But-
Whitechapel.
Yeah,
That's
we
when
did.
my buddy got married up.
It was really, really cool. But all I wanted to do, he wanted to take a motorcycle ride to the Hoover Dam, and I just wanted to go to Zach Baggins' Haunted Museum.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's your thing. It's not really my thing. So I'm just going to wait for you. So he went to some local bar while I went to the museum.
Sure.
And as soon as I left, I'm like, you would have loved it. You would have loved it, because he loves the history and the true crime.
Sure.
So that's one
There's
of his.
a lot of that in there.
Yeah, one of his regrets is not going to the museum
Well,
with
now
me.
I got a reason to go back to Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. But Zach Baggins, he did kind of help open the door for people like me to come in and make it more mainstream and be able to investigate. So Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, which have changed, they really did a lot. So once it was kind of out in the open that you could talk about ghosts and my house is haunted and I like to look for ghosts, and they weren't trying to commit you or call you crazy, it really opened up the door. Plus the internet, where now I'm meeting people who feel the same as I do. So that's how I originally got into it. It was kind of silenced for many years because you would be weird if you talked about ghosts, to, hey, this is open and I know other people. I've met people all over the country who are also interested in ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a good time to be a ghost hunter, good time to be into it.
Well, I remember when I first started getting into ghosts and monsters and all that stuff. Remember In Search of, the original In Search of?
Loved In
with
Search
Leonard
of.
Nimoy. That's what originally piqued my interest in Bigfoot and all that UFOs, ghosts.
Sunday nights at 7.
And those shows were really well done.
They were amazing.
They
Yeah.
still hold up today, those shows. Now, were you like me? Did you think that there was one Bigfoot? Like there was one monster,
I thought there was
Bigfoot?
one abominable snowman, a Yeti, if you will. But I thought there was families of Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Big feet?
Big feet. I thought there was just one. I'm like, how's he get around?
Well,
He's got big feet.
He's like me, he gets around, man.
Yeah, we've heard of big feet. We got dead feet over here.
Thanks, Scott, for bringing that up.
Yeah, In Search of was a great show.
It was.
And that was probably one of the earliest shows that I remember before reality TV that embraced it. And then there were shows like Sightings with Dan Aykroyd.
Yes. Well, Dan Aykroyd's a big UFO guy.
Huge. Well, he's a huge paranormal guy.
Is he? Okay.
So the entire Ghostbusters movies came out of his love for the paranormal. And he actually wrote a book. It was kind of the history. I'm going to get it wrong now. I don't know if it's the history of spiritualism or the history of ghost hunters. Apparently, somebody in his family was very into it, into paranormal research and stuff.
I think I remember something about that, his grandfather or something. Rick, fact check that. So let's fast forward to where you met Kathy. How did you guys start the Haunted Housewives? Now, you were the original Haunted Housewife, right?
Yes, I was the original Haunted Housewife. I was approached by the city of Mayfield, actually, to do a class. They wanted to know if I wanted to do a class about ghosts or ghost hunting. And apparently, they used to have a class by Sherry Brake, and she did the Canal Fulton Ghost Walks. We love Sherry, by the way.
Okay. Shout out, Sherry. I know you're watching.
Going to see you in a couple weeks. She did this ghost hunting class at the old schoolhouse in Mayfield Village, which is right there on the corner by Center School. And she doesn't even live in the area, so apparently she was not doing that anymore. And they asked me if I wanted to kind of take it over or take its place. I was happy to. So I started doing ghost hunting 101 kind of classes. And my husband was getting a little perturbed because I was still working at the time. Our children were very young. And he said that, you know, I'm away all the time. I'm more interested in ghosts than being a wife. I'm like a haunted housewife. And I'm like, hey, that's a good name. So the moniker kind of stuck, but his favorite quote is to say there's a lot more haunted and a lot less housewife in me. But so I was a haunted housewife, and doing the classes was great. It was kind of a way to extend what I did to the community and meet more people. But even before that, I had joined a ghost hunting team called Paranormal Researchers of Ohio. But they were located on the west side. We had moved to the east side. And I didn't do a whole lot with them once I moved, just because my kids were young. But they were involved with a fundraising event with this woman named Kathy Weber from Willoughby. So they were in cahoots with Kathy to have basically what is a paranormal investigation or a paranormal event. And Kathy would come in and tell the history and everything, and then they would do a little ghost hunt. And it was a great way that they not made money for themselves, but raised some money. And I was really interested in that. I thought that's really cool. I want to do some more of that. And the women that I worked with in Paranormal Researchers of Ohio were like, yeah, we didn't want to really do that anymore. So you should contact Kathy, you know, and see if she wants to do it. So I looked up Kathy, and she was living here in Willoughby, and she had a business called The Spice Peddler down on Main Street there. And she was not the least bit interested in dealing with me. And I approached her one day, I contacted her. I'm like, hey, I'm Theresa Argie, and, you know, I work with PRO now, Paranormal Researchers of Ohio. I know you did an event with them. I think it would be really cool if we could do some more events. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm not really a ghost hunter. Yeah, but you're a historian, and you tell stories, and she's like, yeah, you know, well, maybe I'll think about it. And she never got back to me. So I found out where she worked.
And you bought a bunch of spices?
I started coming into the spice shop a lot. And she's like,
I need some more paprika.
This is this crazy lady from Mayfield.
Do you have any of that dried ghost pepper?
Yeah, some ghost pepper. So I'd show up there, and I was trying to talk to her there, and I could tell she was kind of like, okay, I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm a historian. I'm running a spice shop. But she did the Willoughby Ghost Walk. And I'm like, but you have a ghost walk. She had just started the Willoughby Ghost Walk. She's like, yes, I am a storyteller. I tell the stories and the history. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the same thing. Not the same thing at all. She's like, I'm not interested in ghost hunting. So then I had to start coming to the Ghost Walk. So I'd show up at the Ghost Walk. I'd buy a ticket. And I'll never forget the first time I bought a ticket to the Ghost Walk, and I could see her face like, oh God,
Stalker.
That woman's here again. Yeah, she's a stalker. And
Ma'am, I don't have any spices on me.
This was your first restraining order?
Yeah, they only last so long.
Right.
So
I had to stay 500 feet away from her during the whole ghost walk.
I was in the back for the ghost walk. Actually, I wasn't. I was right up in front for the ghost walk. I was all like hanging on every word and trying to talk to her in between stops, or we would, we'd go to one stop and I'd be talking to her the whole time while we're walking, and I could tell she was a little, but when we got here and we started in downtown Willoughby, we would start at the old Masonic Temple. That's where the ghost walk started, which is a really, really cool building with good history. So we started there, and the Willoughby Coal here was just one of the stops on the ghost walk. It was like the halfway point, and then we would turn around and go back. As we started walking on the property, the closer I got to the building, the sicker I got. I felt completely overwhelmed. And the closer I got to Willoughby Coal, I was nauseous, to the point where we got almost to the front steps and I had to excuse myself and go and throw up. Yeah. So Kathy thought I was drunk. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't on drugs.
All the bad spices you've been eating.
Maybe, yeah. I was overwhelmed. I can't even explain it. I was overwhelmed with this. I can't even describe it, but something just completely overwhelmed my entire body, and I felt completely sick. It felt like I had just energy coming at me 100 miles an hour. And she was trying to tell her story. I couldn't even listen, and I would back away and I'd feel better, and I'd go up closer to hear her talk and I'd get sick again. So I just backed up, and then she was like, "Okay, crazy lady, are you okay?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I just felt really overwhelmed as I got closer to the building. I don't know what it is." And I think it was that moment, she's like, she's either drunk or she's sensitive. I don't know what's going on. But at the end of the ghost walk, and then I came back for another one.
Glutton for punishment.
I was like, I think I convinced her that if she didn't come on a ghost hunt with me, that she'd never get rid of me. So I said, let's go to Mansfield Prison. Come with me on a ghost hunt. I will take you ghost hunting, and you can tell me anything you know about history and how to do research. Yeah.
I tried.
And she really was not interested, but I think she knew this woman's not going to leave. I'm not going to get rid of her. I said, let me show you what I do, and then you can show me what you do.
That's awesome.
So finally, she agreed. And we set up a little event at a place called the Ohio State Reformatory, Mansfield Prison. And as weary as she was about being there with me, I think she was there 20 minutes, and she said, "I'm in. 100%.
Really?
I am in." Yeah, wow. She was bitten by the bug immediately. And her background's different. She experienced things as a young child, like many people, but her mother and father, they encouraged it. They said, question it, look into it, research it. And she was told to embrace what she felt and do her own research and think for herself, completely opposite of what I was.
That's great.
So, but once we did the Ohio State Reformatory, that was it. And we have been like this ever since. And instead of the Haunted Housewife, we became the Haunted Housewives. She's always been the ghost lady. She's the ghost lady of Willoughby, or the ghost lady of Ohio. But once we decided we're going to work together, we became the Haunted Housewives. Kind of a long story.
No,
but
that was cool. Now, how long ago was that now? 12,
13 years,
wow.
maybe
So
a little bit longer.
That's a great relationship that you guys have.
Yeah, long time.
A lot of marriages don't last that long.
I'm telling you, I can't even, So I would always say, it's been 10 years, it's been 10 years. And Kathy's like, it's been way longer than 10 years. I mean, we were on TV more than 10 years ago together. It's been, we both changed, we've got older and our families have changed, but the relationship is just kind of solidified. She's my bestie.
That's awesome.
My bestie ghostie.
We all have one.
But I also started working for her on the ghost walk. She's like, if you're going to come around this much, you're going to start working. So I became one of her
Carry
tour
this
guides.
lantern, you're on your
there
way.
you go. You know the stories. Go.
And we're going to touch on some of those stories in a little bit. But you guys don't consider yourselves like paranormal investigators per se. You call yourselves para-historians, right? Because you're more into like the history of not just the ghosts themselves, but the buildings and the places that you go into, because the buildings tell a story themselves.
Oh, yeah. The walls can talk.
Yeah.
Kathy was the one who really opened my eyes to the beauty of knowing the history and respecting the history. Because I was like, ooh, ghosts, cool, scary, fun.
Right.
And she's like, there's a lot more to it. And ghosts aren't here for entertainment. And I kind of saw more her side of it as I was showing her, well, yes, but, ghosts are cool and we can still interact and respect their history if we know more about them. But yeah, parahistorian is a term. I like to say we've coined that term. I don't know. I've never heard anybody else use it until we started using it. But we are paranormal investigators, but we're historians first. Yeah. And Kathy's really, really good with the research, and she knows the ins and outs of research. And so we like that term because unlike what we've seen with people on television and people who have other groups, they want to capture evidence. Right. They want to prove to the world that ghosts exist. I'm like, man, it's 2022. You can show me a video of a ghost coming out and saying, hi, I'm a ghost. I died 50 years ago. This is how I died, and now I'm a ghost, and I'm going to disappear. And unless I'm there to see it, I'm not going to believe it because you can fake all that.
Oh, there's so much of it out there now.
It's so easy. I mean, we have apps on our phone that can do that. So we decided years ago we were going to try to prove anything to anybody. We're not going to try to change anyone's mind. We don't even post evidence. So even when we do, the only time we will share evidence is if we're going to be on a TV show or a podcast or something where they want us to bring some EVPs, or if we're doing a private home and they want to see if we've captured anything. Kind of But or if is there something in my basement, and if we capture anything, we'll show them. But we don't believe in putting it out there like other teams will put it on their websites or out on the internet. And I'm like, you're just asking for trouble. Because then people come and they'll rip it apart. I could give you the best EVP of Abraham Lincoln's telling you how he felt when he was shot. But again, it can be fake. So who's going to believe that? So we don't believe in that. We would rather do the research, learn the history, and tell the story.
Sure.
And we like to say that we give a voice to the dead. So it's not just that there's a ghost here, but there's a ghost of this woman named Mary who died in 1843, and she had a husband and she had 2 children and she loved to knit or whatever it is to kind of honor them. You know,
they were people. I mean, they had feelings. I mean,
they had feelings, they had families, they had children, they had loves. They all have a story to tell. Sure. And maybe it's not the most interesting story, but now it's interesting because now they're a ghost. And also, we have to remember that we also can't prove that we're talking to Mary, who died in this year and had these children. Right. We don't know for sure. We have no way of verifying that.
Most ghosts don't carry an identification card.
They don't. And again, they can be fake too. I had a fake ID.
Yeah. This ghost can drink.
So, you know, that's kind of our theory. We come across it from the historical point of view and the research, and especially with the buildings too, because we found if we can take a building, and history is fun to us, but many people find history boring. But you take a kid to a museum and they're like, oh, so boring. But you tell the kid, hey, this museum's haunted. Ooh.
All of a sudden you got the radar up.
So we found that if we can find a ghost story attached to some of these historic buildings, we can get more people interested in coming to them and maybe visiting them, maybe making a donation, things like that. So, absolutely. And you know, this building, it's seen a lot. So we find that just as fascinating.
We'll touch on that in our next segment. But like you say, it says right here, devotion to historic preservation through paranormal avenues.
Right.
I mean, that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah. We do a lot of fundraisers for historic places, small places that you maybe never heard of. The Painesville Depot, the Painesville Railroad Depot, we're doing that tomorrow night. And it's a very small place with a very, very small amount of funds that come in. And we try to do 2 events a year there where we bring people in to ghost hunt with us. We tell them a story. We walk around. Sometimes they just kind of watch us ghost hunt. Sometimes they actually participate. But we can get people to come and visit this spot which never want to be there before. And we might raise $200 or $300. That's great. But places we've done for years, like the Lake County History Center, which is the old poorhouse in Painesville. And we've been doing fundraisers there for years. We have raised tens of thousands of dollars for them over the years.
That's good.
And that makes a significant difference. The Indian Museum, which used to be in downtown Willoughby, and now it's moved into Menor, another small place that doesn't get a lot of visitors. Sure. So, but we like that. If we can bring in awareness and a little bit of money for them, that's great. We love it.
And what about, what's this, Greenwood Farm?
Greenwood Farm's cool. That place is in Richmond Heights, so that's really close to my house. And I really love that place. And it's an old farm, and it's the Pfeiffer farm. So it was an old family farm, and it was 87 acres, I believe. Wow. And Right now, it's an old manor house, and there's an old Yankee barn there. It's over 100 years old. And then in the back of the property, there's an old caretaker's cottage, and there's still quite a bit of acreage, and it's right along a creek. And they would host things. It's owned by the city, so they would host things like Boy Scouts would come and do some nature stuff by the creek, or they'd have a junk in the trunk show, or things like that. Not a lot, but. We found out some of the history of it, and we were asked, hey, do you want to maybe do an event here? Maybe there's something here, because some of the volunteers thought that the house was creepy, and we're like, hey, it's old, maybe. Sure. And we found some really interesting stuff about the Pfeiffer family. Good family, nothing bad, but really interesting things. And yeah, for sure, it's haunted. Okay, and so we started doing events there, which were fantastic. And since we started doing events there, they have attracted the attention of Hollywood, and they filmed several movies there. Not huge movies, but still movies, and even a small movie will bring in a huge amount of money. So they filmed a movie called The Bye-Bye Man there, which is a horror movie. Faye Dunaway was in it. Oh. Yeah, and Carrie-Anne Moss from The Matrix.
Okay.
Again, not a huge blockbuster, but a scary movie. And they used the inside of the house for many of the scenes. And it's really cool. It's really creepy. And the beauty of it, besides the money they got for renting it out for Hollywood, they also said, well, you know, we were going to have to upgrade the roof needs to be fixed, and we've got to upgrade your electricity while we're here. And we're going to have to paint this room. And they're like, okay, sure. And so they just did a lot of renovation for free. They filmed another horror movie called Little Evil, which is very funny.
I think I've heard of that.
It's a horror movie, but it was very funny. It was kind of like a play off the Damien thing. And I forgot the name of the gentleman who's in it, but Lily Evangel from Lost, she's in it. It's a very funny, scary movie. But they filmed other movies in there since. And we bring them in a few $100s. They bring in thousands of dollars when they do movies there. But Greenwood Farm is great. And I'm just glad that we got involved with that, and we hope to get back there again.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
So you've written America's Most Haunted with Eric Olson, which pretty much goes all around the country talking about the scariest places.
So America's Most Haunted was The Secrets of Famous Paranormal Places, and it is the 10 most haunted places in the United States.
Which we're in one of right now.
Right, and they're the 10 most haunted because I said so.
And that's what matters. Eric had nothing to say about that.
I am my own expert. No, well,
I trust you.
Eric actually was only at a couple of the places, so a lot of this is places that Kathy and I have visited. So I wanted to call it The Adventures of Kathy and Theresa, but the publisher was not. No, I think America's Most Haunted is better. So okay.
Speaking of Kathy, she wrote this book.
Yes.
Haunted Willoughby, Ohio, which we're going to talk about in the next segment.
And that is actually Willoughby Cole on the cover of her book.
This is where we're at. We're right underneath this window right there.
And I will say that my chapter in America's Most Haunted about Willoughby Cole is completely plagiarized by Kathy.
It's very similar.
But with her permission, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. She said it was okay, except for the typos I made. So
we'll talk about this a little bit more. But then you guys came together and wrote your book together, Love Beyond the Grave.
Yes, Love Beyond the Grave, True Tales of Haunted Hearts. So this is a little bit different. It's still ghost stories, but it's ghost stories, true ghost stories that have a kind of a paranormal haunted twist. And don't let the title fool you, man, because there's some really creepy stories in there. There's a little bit of true crime, a little bit of love triangles, some murder mysteries. Yeah, that was fun to research. And then we also have a chapter in there about like animals and how animal spirits and devotion could come to that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, when we first got here, and she was asking if I knew of the books, and I said, yeah, I have 2 of them. I don't have Love Beyond the Grave though, because I'm a dude and I'm not reading any girly ghost stories.
No.
But then I found out it's actually really cool.
Let me tell you, the creepiest story in any of these 3 books is in Love Beyond the Grave. The creepiest, scariest, most disturbing story is the one in Love Beyond the Grave, not in the other 2 books.
Well, so this might have to find its way into my bag before, you know what I'm saying? Before we wrap up this segment, so the ghost walks are coming back, what, in June?
In June, yeah. Okay. We start the ghost walks. We do them 1 weekend a month all summer. And then come September and October, we're running 2, 3, 4, sometimes a week. Yeah. So yeah, coming up. But you can always It's hard to get ghost walks in October, but you can always get one June, July, or August. So
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been on one. They're amazing.
Still scary, even
put
in August.
The website down here or up here, right, Rick? Right, Rick?
Yeah, man.
All right. So that's what we're doing with the Haunted Housewives. Now let's talk about some scary spots in Willoughby and the surrounding areas. We'll even touch on those, but mostly in Willoughby because this is a really cool area.
Ooh, I have a couple that I know of.
Your ex-girlfriend's houses don't count, Keith. We'll be back at 2 and 2. And we're back with segment 2 of Stairway to Cleveland. This segment brought to you by Cleveland Musicians Fundraiser, coming July 25th, Geneva on the Lake, Ohio, where we're going to get 50 of Cleveland's best musicians. We're gonna play
us.
And us. And we're going to play songs by Kiss. And all our proceeds are going to the Sub-Zero mission this year. This is our 6th annual.
And we need to make it bigger than last year.
Yes. And so let's do that. And it's going to be an all-day event starting at noon, going all the way on to like 11
It's
o'clock.
going to be fun.
So go to clevelandmusicianfundraiser.org and see all the information.
Check it out.
All right. This segment, we're going to talk a lot about this area, Willoughby, Ohio. It's chock full of haunted spaces and buildings. So I'm going to go down the list. And as an expert,
yeah.
well, you do the ghost walk and you've done this for 12 years, 13 years, you know. We'll go down the list and we'll touch on all of them. Let's start right here, Willoughby Cole. This is probably obviously the most famous of all the spots in the area and nationwide even. So Willoughby Cole, it was originally I think they call it the Zebra Stage.
The Zebra Stagecoach Inn. So the property that Willoughby Cole sits on was the first area that was settled by the people who were coming through on the Western Reserve. So the very first Stagecoach Inn in this area was on this property. So not necessarily right here, but somewhere on this property. And after the Stagecoach Inn, there was probably at least 2 or more different kinds of Stagecoach Inns. Now we've got a river right out there, the Chagrin River, and then they brought the railroads in. So it made sense for them to be for this area to have an inn. After inns, there were different sorts of like businesses. There was a flour mill. I think there might have been a candle factory of some sort, something. All sorts of different businesses were on this property. But the Zebra Stagecoach Inn was the first one that we could find in our history, that Kathy could find. And then it became a coal company in the 1800s. And back then, coal was essential for life. So people needed coal for fuel. They needed coal for heat. So coal company was big business. And this building or this property was one of the first in the area, and it served Willoughby and a lot of the surrounding communities. So,
So that became Willoughby Coal, and then did they add a name on Willoughby Coal and Garden or something?
Yeah, it went from, I don't remember exactly what it was when it was first a coal company. It was the Goff Kirby Coal Company, and then the two gentlemen who worked there bought the business, changed the name to Willoughby Coal, and I think it's had that name since about 1912, early 1900s. Okay. But yeah, one of the previous owners started a garden center, which is on the spot where the Spirits in Willoughby is the bar, and it was a garden center, so it was, I think actually when I wrote my book, it was still called Willoughby Coal and Garden Center. And it was still up and running as a garden center. And then they just changed it to Willoughby Coal. Now they haven't had coal here since the 80s. So, but the name stuck.
Yeah.
And the building is iconic. So
absolutely. Now, one of the men who bought the building was Don Norris.
Don Norris was one of the previous owners who, him and a gentleman named Henry Windus, bought the property in, I believe, the 1930s, and maybe even sooner. But they had a very successful business. Coal was big business. And the two of them were partners. And Henry Windus really wanted the entire business to himself. Sure. But both of them were supporting their families with Willoughby Coal, and it was very successful. And so in 1943, or 47, excuse me, there was an incident that kind of ended their partnership, but not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
Actually, the window right above where we're sitting, unfortunately, Mr. Norris took a header out that window. They don't know exactly what happened. They say he stepped on a nail and fumbled his way out. In April
of that year, Mr. Norris, the story goes, he woke up, he lived in Willoughby with his family. He woke up in the morning to have breakfast with his wife, and there was no bread for breakfast. So he told his wife, Maud, hey, I'm gonna run into town and get a loaf of bread, but I'm gonna stop by Willoughby Coal and check on a couple things, and then I'll be home to have breakfast. And so his wife said he left the house around 7:15. And he just put on some new clothes, got dressed, left the house. And at about 7:36 or so, the foreman arrived on the property, and he saw Don Norris's car in the lot. And as he approached the front door, he saw something that caught his eye, and he couldn't tell what it was. It looked like a sack or an animal or something. And the closer he got to the front door, he realized it was a body. And he ran up and checked, and it was the body of Don Norris, and he was dead. Wow. So the foreman alerted the authorities, and the police came, and they were trying to figure out what happened to Don Norris, because he had some severe damage to his face. It looked like his arms and legs were broken. He was almost unrecognizable. But he did have his keys to his car in his pocket. He had a substantial amount of money. He hadn't been to the bank yet to drop off the previous day's deposits. And his gold wristwatch had stopped at 7:26. So between about 7:15 and 7:26, Don Norris met his death.
Right.
And they figured, well, he must have been robbed. But then when they saw the money he had on him, they ruled that out.
His car was still here.
Yeah, car was there. Money was in his pocket. So then they thought, well, maybe he had an accident. Maybe he fell off the coal uploader, which was on the side of the building, which they would use to get the coal up and down on the railroad train cars. Sure. But because his arms and legs looked like they were broken, or at least severely damaged, they didn't think he could have made it up the steps. As you guys came in today, you noticed there were some steps. Right. So they didn't think he could have come up the steps in that condition. So then they devised the theory that, well, he must have fallen out the window. And this is right above the front door window. And how that happened, they were trying to piece it together. The coroner found that he had an awful lot of coal residue on his body. And his wife said he just put those clothes on, they were clean. So I don't know how he got so much coal dust on him in such a short period of time. But they did find a little hole or a nick in his boot. So then they put together the story that Don Norris came in to check on the renovations. They were doing some repairs on the roof. The window here was open at the time, probably for aeration. Sure. And for some reason, he came up to the third floor, climbed up the rafters, started checking things out from the window, and somehow fell through. Maybe he caught his little hole on a nail or something, and his death was ruled an accident. highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But that was the original
Well, didn't they
theory.
say that where the rafters ended here, that he would have had to take like a Superman jump to get out that window?
He would have probably had to
Pushed himself out.
like really propped himself
effort
up.
into it, yeah.
I mean, these walls are close to a foot thick,
Sure.
as you can see when you look out the windows.
Absolutely.
So he really had to do some gymnastics to get himself out that window. So, but that was the theory. And unfortunately, because of his death, his partner, Henry Windus, got his wish. He became the sole proprietor of Willoughby Coal. That did not leave a lot of financial support for his wife or kids.
Sure.
Which was very unfortunate. But that was the official story, and we have no proof that anything but that really happened. Now, there's been theories over the years, and we know that Don Norris's family believes that there was something else involved. They believe, as do we, that when Don Norris showed up that morning,
He was ambushed.
he was greeted by people, or several people, when he walked in the door, dragged up the stairs kicking and screaming, which would account for having all the coal dust on him, and helped out that window. Again, we don't know for sure. We can't prove it, but that is what the family believed, and that is what we believe. And Kathy even spoke to a descendant of Don Norris several years ago on the Ghost Walk, who said that that's what they believed happened. But, he said, she said, we can point fingers all night. We have no way to prove anything. So his accident was, his death was ruled an accident.
Whoa.
Now, next to Mr. Norris, there was also a couple other notable ghosts that roam the premises here.
Zip, yeah. And Don Norris, we believe that's one of the reasons why he haunts here, because he wants people to know that his death was not an accident, or he wants people to know, yeah, it was an accident, let it go. We don't know.
Right.
But Don Norris is not alone. He is definitely the most prominent ghost here, but he is also has the company of Zip, and Zip was a gentleman who worked here. He did some odd jobs for one of the previous owners. He would make deliveries and things like that. He was a little eccentric, and he liked to drink, and his wife, to Zip. Here we go. His wife sometimes thought it was best that he spent time away, so they actually set up a little bedroom for him on the first floor.
Okay.
And Zip lived here for several years, I guess, before his death. And he had some crazy habits. He used to like to collect things and hide things. He liked to collect coins, gold and silver coins. And he had a gun collection, apparently. None of this was found after he died. Now, he did die of natural causes. I believe that I mistakenly said in my book that he had died here, because that's what I had heard at the time when I wrote the book, but I do believe that he had a stroke and died outside the property.
Okay.
But Zip is still here, we believe, either guarding his treasure, or maybe he just really liked it here and he wants to hang out here. But
Now,
he's
that was in the 70s, right?
yeah, and that's another ghost that we communicate with quite often here. We've actually had Zip's daughter has come, and
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and it was really cool. She came on the Ghost Walk once, introduced herself, and wanted to come back, and we did a little private investigation with her, and we were downstairs in the area where Zip would sleep, and we were talking with our recorders, trying to get some interaction, and we said, Zip, we have someone here. Is there somebody here that you recognize? And we got the response, hello, Patricia, and her name was Patty.
Wow.
And to prove that it was him, she asked what his favorite type of pie was, and he said rhubarb.
So there's one more ghost that presides here that we all are aware of.
The most beloved ghost of Willoughby Coal, and that is the ghost of Yukon the dog. So Yukon's story is very sad. In fact, when we tell it on the Ghost Walk, we tell about poor Don Norris being murdered, and people are like, and then we tell about poor Yukon that got hit by a train, and here, oh, I'm like, wow, nobody gives a crap that Mr. Norris took a header out the window, but the dog. But anyway, Yukon was the dog of one of the previous owners, and he would come to work with the owner every day since he was a little puppy till the time he was an older dog. You know, older dogs, their sight's going, they don't hear too good, and they smell kind of funny. But one day when they were closing up shop, they couldn't find Yukon, and they looked all over for him. And he was nowhere to be found, which was a little weird because he didn't get around too well. He couldn't really climb the steps that much, so they didn't know where he went. But on a whim, they decided to look outside, and it was a cold winter day. And they did see that there was little paw prints in the snow going down the steps. They followed him along, and they followed him to the railroad tracks, where unfortunately they found poor Yukon. He had been hit by a train. So his owner brought him back, put him in front of the pot-bellied stove, which is still downstairs, and he died in his owner's arms. So very, very sad story. Yukon died. But we believe that Yukon has never left. And the stories that Kathy collected are, even after Yukon died, people were so used to seeing him that they didn't think twice about it. And customers would come in, and they would be doing their business at the counter, and you'd hear them say, "Hey, Yukon," and then they just go about their business. And the women who worked behind the counter were going, What?
Right.
What'd you? No, I was just saying hi to Yukon. They're like, "Yukon isn't here." Yeah, yes, just saw him. And this happened over and over again. And then some of the women who worked in the office said that they would either see him walking by or they would hear him. So we believe that Yukon never left. And I love those stories, especially from the customers, because they didn't know Yukon was dead. So they had no reason to believe it was a ghost. But we've had people come in here that have sensed Yukon, that have seen him in spirit. I'm not a psychic. Kathy's not a psychic, but we do have friends that are sensitive to that. And we've had 2 different psychics on 2 different occasions. One that didn't even live in Ohio, that didn't know the story of Yukon, that both talked about the spirit of the dog, and they described the dog the same way. The most interesting story we feel about Yukon was one of our friends. Actually, this is Becca, and she is with she's Adam Kimmel from Madison Seminary. This is his girlfriend. She before she, I don't even think she knew Adam at the time, but she came here, and it was her first time here. I think she was originally from Kentucky, and she sensed that there were the spirits of a older man and a young boy in the back stockroom, which was not original part of Willoughby Coal. But she said that they were runaway slaves.
Wow.
And that they were here because there was a place here that was part of the Underground Railroad. And we have no way of proving or disproving that, but this is just what she was getting.
Makes sense.
So,
I mean, you're right by the railroad tracks. This area was known to be part of the Underground
absolutely.
Railroad.
I mean, it would be a perfect spot for it.
The Underground Railroad has nothing to do with railroad tracks.
Right, but it would be a way for them to travel, to be traveling to.
Shut up, Rick.
They could easily travel to and from this area.
Fact check that.
I don't have to.
I'm listening to you, but I can't help but laugh when Scott makes mistakes. So
It's so rare.
But this area was known. They talk about the Writers Inn being part of it too. We don't know for sure. But anyway, Becca said that she sensed this this man and this young boy, and they were cowering and they were hiding and they were afraid of us. And we're like, well, who's us? And like, Kathy and myself and the people who run the Willoughby Ghost Walk. When we do the Ghost Walk, we dress in costume.
Sure.
And it's usually something that looks like it's from the Civil War area, the big hoop skirts and the everything, and we carry the lanterns. And according to Becca, she said that they are afraid of us because they thought we were slave catchers, that we were looking for them. And that made me very sad. I was like, and we were like, please tell them that we are not.
Right,
this is not what we're here for. But she said they're also afraid of the dog because slave catchers would also often use dogs. And we're like, dogs? What dog? And she described Yukon.
Wow.
And she said that they were hiding here because they were afraid of Yukon, who was here in the building. Now, she didn't use Yukon as a name because she didn't know the name. She didn't know anything about the dog. But to us, that just kind of validated that. So that was an amazing story. Yukon, his spirit has been here. Kathy has, the first time there was ever any kind of ghost investigation here, people, they felt him, they smelled him, they saw his a furry shape run by. They heard a growl. So when we tell people, when you hear a growl, that doesn't mean it's a demon. It could just be an animal.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, I will tell you, before we move on from Willoughby Coal, I'll tell you my personal experience here. I came on the Ghost Walk a few years ago, and Kathy was leading it. And we came in here. She had the keys. We came in here, our group, and she had her recorder, similar to the one you showed us before we started taping. And she goes, we get a lot of activity in this back room, you know, the whole thing. She goes, I'm going to go in this back room with this recorder and put it down, and maybe we'll get some EVPs on here. So she walked back there. She goes, okay, I'm going to come back there. I'm going to put this recorder down right here. If you feel like talking, just speak into the microphone. Then she came back. She goes, okay, give it a minute. We stood there. She went back there and grabbed it. She came back. She rewound it. And you could hear her walking back there. Okay, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to place this down. If you want to talk, speak into the microphone. And right after that, you hear, microphone. Clear as a bell. Dude, I'm getting the goosebumps right now because that's what happened.
I'm going to keep drinking.
Clear as a bell. And she was like not even affected. She's like, yep, there you go. I'm like,
And
what?
Those recorders are voice activated. So technically, the only thing you should have heard on that recording is, okay, I'm going to put the microphone down, and then footsteps walking away, maybe the door shutting. And then you should have immediately heard, okay, I'm coming back. And that's what you should hear. So that's what we love about this place. And we've gotten some really great audio files.
Sure.
I don't want to call it evidence. When we've just placed them in there and let them go.
Yeah.
We were on the second floor one day when we first got one of those recorders I was telling you about, the one that Kathy used.
Yeah.
First time we had the recorder, it was like a Tuesday night. We just got it. We were all excited. So we were like, let's go to Willoughby Cole. So we met up here and we were on the second floor and we were running the recorder and we said, so do you know Don Norris? Remember Don Norris, who used to be the owner? And do you know what happened to him? Can you tell us what happened to Don Norris? And the response we got back on the recorder was, murdered.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, you know.
He's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we love it. We've gotten people that say We've had voices that say that they're Don Norris. We've had voices that say, we had a group of people in here and they were police officers off duty. And we told the story of Don Norris and we believed that somebody had helped him out that window.
Sure.
And the police officer, he asked, Mr. Norris, if you're here, can you ever forgive whoever it is that's responsible for your death? And the response we got was, never forgive. And then we asked, do you know who it was that's responsible for your death? And we got, it was Henry.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So again,
There you go.
Henry Windus was his partner.
Wow.
We don't know for sure, but yeah, really, really creepy stuff.
Before, one more thing from now, I was reading your books. Now, there was an attached spirit named Mike, I believe, was it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was from, that's not from here. That's from the Ohio State Reformatory. That was a spirit that attached itself to Kathy, and it took us quite a while to get rid of him. And honestly, if it hadn't happened to Kathy and I hadn't been part of that and part of her life at that time, I don't even know if I would believe in spirits attaching themselves to you. So there's nothing here in Willoughby Cole or even anywhere in Willoughby that we consider bad or evil or anything that would possibly do that.
Sure.
But man, there are some places in Ohio and the place where we met that particular spirit, there's some negative stuff there, some scary juju.
Yeah.
Really?
Let's talk about, okay, well, obviously, Willoughby Cole's the crown jewel of the ghost walk here.
Favorite spot, yes.
Yes. But let's talk about some of these other places real quick while we go down the list. Another one that has a crazy history is the Willoughby Medical College.
The Willoughby Medical College. So that is down on in what they call Point Park, which is downtown Willoughby. They're
Used to be the tech center, wasn't it?
right. It used to be the Willoughby Tech Center. It was a school. It was it was
Had a gazebo and all that.
It was a school. It was like high school. It was a trade high school, and many people. We get people on the Ghost Walk that went to school there. But many years ago, in like the 1840s, there was a medical college there. It is not the same building.
Okay.
It was a smaller building, but it was on the property. These men came in, they bought up the property, they opened a medical college, which we didn't think would happen in this area. Sure. This area wasn't even known as Willoughby at the time, it was known as Chagrin. Right. They wanted the doctor that taught them in medical school to come and lead them, and his name was Westel Willoughby. So
they named the city after him.
They named the city after him. And he said, yeah, thanks, it's really an honor, but I'm not coming.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Willoughby Medical College eventually opened. And when you have a medical school, even in a small area like this, and this was a farming community, you need cadavers for the students to work on.
Sure.
So again, this is a small community. It was a small community at the time, but the medical college kept growing and growing. So at one point there was an issue with where are all these bodies coming from? And the people who lived here thought that there was something up with there was something fishy going on. Mm-hmm. But the students at the medical school were said, don't ask questions when they come and deliver the bodies.
Right.
Just get a receipt. And that went on for some time until one hot August night, one of the bodies decided to fight back. And a woman who had been traveling with her husband, they came into this area to visit with their daughter, and the husband had developed an illness of scarlet fever or yellow fever, something like that. And because it was August, they couldn't send his body back. He had to be buried here in town. So he was buried in one of the cemeteries, and she was devastated. And a few days after her husband was buried, she woke to this horrible sight of her dead husband at the end of her bed crying, help me, they're taking me apart piece by piece at the Willoughby Medical School. So, she was like, am I dreaming? What's going on? She woke up her daughter, they got their neighbors, they went to the grave. The grave was empty. So they figured, he's at the medical school. So there was a caravan of angry citizens that raided the medical school that night, and they were breaking equipment and breaking windows. And
weren't they throwing body parts through windows?
According to the newspaper, they were throwing body parts out the window. Now, we've known from research that sometimes they tend to exaggerate, but you can get the idea. They were
fake news.
Yeah, fake news. They were throwing body parts out the window. So we were imagining a scene out of Frankenstein with angry citizens.
Pitchforks and torches.
Yes, and eventually the gentlemen, the doctors that ran the medical school, they arrived and they begged the guard, which the Lake County Guard, which was their equivalent of the police, please send everyone home. We'll return Mr. Norris's, Mr. Tarbell's body. And it was Eli Tarbell was the name of the gentleman. And so eventually everyone went away. And in the morning, Mrs. Tarbell went back to the grave with her daughter, and according to her, there was something that resembled human remains in the grave, but she could not positively identify them as Eli Tarbell's. Right. But of course, that was the nail in the coffin of the medical school, because after that, the enrollment dropped, the town wanted them out, and it pretty much ended it. So the one doctor moved his charter to Columbus and started the Starling Medical College, which became the Ohio State School of Medicine.
Isn't that crazy?
The other one said, I'm taking my charter to Cleveland. He started the Western Reserve College of Medicine, which became Case Western Reserve. Mm-hmm. And the remaining doctor gave it a go, didn't work, so he said, I'm done. I'm going to start a seminary for women. Moved it out to Painesville, and that became the Lake Erie College for Women. Wow. So we did get some good things that came out of this body snatching scandal.
Sure.
But that was pretty much, that was it for that area. And the spot where the tech center is now seems to have been tainted by the stuff that went on there.
Sure.
Because the reports of the hauntings in the tech center, which was on the property but not the same building, continued for years. We've collected stories since the 70s about that building being haunted and strange things being seen inside and outside the building.
Sure.
So.
Well, let's move on to another legend here, the Girl in Blue.
The Girl in Blue. This should be a movie.
It should be.
It should be a movie. And it's not just a paranormal trope either. This is a true story. The Girl in Blue, her story started on Christmas Eve in 1933. A young woman found herself lost in downtown Willoughby. She had been either kicked off the bus or she got off the bus because she was lost. And she was looking for a place to spend the night. She was directed to Mrs. Judd's boarding house, which was in town in 1933. They didn't have Holiday Inns. No. So young women traveling by themselves would look for a boarding house to stay in. She asked for a room, was granted a room for the night, spent a few hours there. In the morning, she got up, had some breakfast, asked if there were any churches nearby. Mrs. Judd pointed out the various churches. She left for about an hour, came back, went upstairs, gathered the only thing she had with her, which was just a small blue satchel, and she was wearing the same clothes she arrived in, which was a blue skirt, blue shawl. Said Merry Christmas, and out she went. But instead of going to the train station or the bus station, she followed the railroad tracks along till she found a nice, quiet hiding spot. And she hid behind some bushes or some shrubbery until there was a train coming by, flying by, because this was not a stop for the trains. And right at the moment she chose, she threw herself in front of the train. She was clipped by the train, but it was enough to kill her, threw her body back. They stopped the train as soon as they could. By the time they collected her body, they realized that she was dead. She had no identification on her. No one in town knew who she was. Right. Mrs. Judd couldn't explain anything. She said, I don't know, she never gave me a name. She just kind of showed up. So the mystery of the Girl in Blue, she was buried here. A plot was donated for her. And they just called her the Girl in Blue, killed by a train December 24th, 1933. Unknown but not forgotten. That's what it says on her gravestone. Yeah. And it took 60 years before she was finally identified as Josephine Klimczak. Apparently, she was from Corey, Pennsylvania. No one in the family knew how she ended up in Willoughby. She had been spending Detroit with her brothers and sisters that were there looking for work. So they don't know why she came to Willoughby, why she decided to throw herself in front of the train. So there's been many theories. Some that she was homesick and didn't want to go home, but that doesn't make sense. Some say she came here to meet a sweetheart. She was to be married at Christmas and he never showed. Others say that Willoughby at the time was connected very heavily with the mob, and Mrs. Judd had another business besides a legit boarding house, that maybe she came here seeking the services of a doctor that would perform certain procedures for unmarried women who found themselves in a family way. All theories, sure. None of which we know. We don't know for sure. We're lucky that we even got her name. Yeah. But the Girl in Blue is definitely the most famous ghost that haunts Willoughby.
Was it her brother that identified her?
Her brother did show up several years after she died, as people would come by often and say, oh, let me see the picture of the Girl in Blue. I think I might know her, because they had a picture of her from the morgue. But no one ever did. But one day a gentleman did show up, saw the picture and said, that's her, that's my sister, gave the name to the sexton of the cemetery, and left some money for some flowers, and off he went. But the sexton of the cemetery could not remember the name that the gentleman had given. So he thought he knew what it was, but none of the names he remembered worked
Polish
out.
Name or something though, wasn't it? So it was hard probably to spell her right.
It was Klimczak, and it was some butchering of that name, sure. So they never could. It wasn't until a newspaper article came out on the 60th anniversary of her death that a realtor who had sold a farm in Corey, Pennsylvania, finally put two and two together and said, I think I know who this is. But yeah.
And you could, I mean, her gravesite is on the ghost tour, and it's been known to have orbs and things of that nature there.
Let me tell you, besides this place, Willoughby Cole, the most haunted spot in Willoughby is definitely the gravesite of the Girl in Blue.
Really?
I mean, we have had some crazy stuff happen there. Besides people seeing faces, people hearing voices, blue orbs, and we're not huge believers in orbs, but why are they blue? Right. Why are they blue there? We don't know. We once had a private ghost walk coming on a very, very cold, windy November day, and it was bad. We should not have been out.
Sure.
And before we entered the cemetery, we kind of had to give people our spiel, like, please be respectful, don't dance on the graves, things
Right.
like that. People are buried here, so be respectful. And as we were giving our spiel, we heard this enormous crash.
Oh boy.
And we're like, wow, that was really loud. We got to the grave and we realized that the entire top of the mulberry tree, or whatever tree it is that's above her grave, the entire top portion had been struck by lightning and had fallen.
Wow.
Now, if we had been in the cemetery 2 minutes earlier,
Got
we'd
hit.
have a whole lot more ghosts to talk about on the Willoughby Ghost Walk.
Sure.
And I honestly believe that was Josephine Klimczak. I believe that she made sure that tree came down before we got there. The only spot that was completely untouched was the grave itself and where I stand and tell my story.
No
So
kidding.
I think she likes me the best.
Well, boy, how could you not?
How could you not? Yeah.
We're looking out for you, Sophie. Let's move on. We'll talk as brief as possible on some of these, but they're so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these I know a lot about. The railroad buildings, which were including like Willoughby Soul now, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
former Willoughby Brewing Company.
Yeah.
And when the ticket booth moved back
Right.
behind there as well.
So all three of those are kind of connected. It's the restaurant that is now Soul. It used to be Gavi's. That used to be the sub-power station for the CP&E Railroad. And the ticket office was a building that is right on the main street there now. It was actually moved from the center of the parking lot. But that was where the original ticket office was. And then the building where the old Willoughby Brewing Company is, that was the car barn. So the three of those places were connected by the CP&E Railroad, which was like a trolley system.
Okay.
And the history goes back to the 1896, which closed in 1927, I believe. But when you think about railroads and things back then, a lot of people got maimed and hurt.
Sure.
But a lot of history. And some of the ghost stories about there are some people that were hurt when they were working on the railroad that are said to haunt the building that was a Willoughby Brewing Company. In the building that was the ticket office, there was a spirit, an apparition that has been seen that looks like a train conductor.
Wow.
He seems to be a very happy spirit and just likes to kind of play jokes. And
Yeah.
anybody who's been in that building seems to see the same apparition. And then the crazy stuff about Soul Restaurant, which was the sub-power station, is they would hear trains going through there when there were no trains going by.
Wow.
And a creepy person in the basement and the women's bathroom. So,
Well, that's nothing new.
yeah. But even to this day, even the people who
gonna say,
work at
creepy
Soul
people in the
now
women's
say
bathroom.
that they see faces in the bathroom mirrors, and they all know that it's haunted. They just accept it.
Now, I know at the Willoughby Brewing Company that there was a legend that somebody hung themselves, and then when they presented a new painting, that in the painting there was actually somebody hanging in that window,
Yeah.
and they left it there. I mean,
It was an artwork. It was like a metal etching artwork that was the facade of the building when Willoughby Brewing Company first opened in, I think, like 1990
97,
something. Yeah.
something like that.
So they had commissioned this piece of artwork to be done, and when the owner received it, he said, "It's ruined. Why would you do that? That's not funny."
Right.
You know, you vandalized it. And the people who did it, what are you talking about? They're like, look, and you could look in the window of the artwork and it looks like there's a figure that's hanging in there.
Wow.
And the story goes that a person hung themselves there when that building was used as like a machine shop.
okay.
So again, we don't know if those are true,
Sure.
but we have seen that piece of artwork and it does look a little weird.
Yeah. Let's move on. Charter One Bank, Dr. Chesborough building.
Dr. Ferenia Chesbrough was a female doctor that came in about the turn of the century here to Willoughby, and she was a female doctor, which was a huge deal. And she took care of a lot of women and babies and women in labor. She was also here during the Spanish flu epidemic, so a very beloved part of the community. And one of the grateful parents who Dr. Chesbrough had helped his wife and his baby bought that property and built that building as her home. Dr. Chesbrough was there until she retired. She moved out to Lake County, I believe. And the stories from the bank, most of them we got from the bank. It wasn't always, when it was after Dr. Chesbrough's house, it became several different different buildings, but it was the bank when it was Charter One and then Citizens. And most of the stories we know were from that era. But we've seen faces in the window of children. The ghosts of a little girl and a little boy have been seen both upstairs and downstairs. People have heard laughter, all sorts of really, really interesting things that seem to evolve around a children's spirit in that building.
Wasn't there a father and his son? The son went into the bathroom and came back out and said, "There's somebody in there. I can't use the bathroom."
Yeah. Little boy needed to use the bathroom really, really badly when he was in there with his father. And they asked one of the employees, can he use the employee bathroom? Because the kid was going to pee his pants. So they said, yeah, sure, it's upstairs. So the father took the son upstairs and said, hurry up. Kid opens the door to the bathroom and stepped inside. And then he immediately came back out and shut the door. And his dad said, what are you doing? I thought you had to go to the bathroom. He goes, I do. There's someone in there. So his dad was, oh my God, mortified, saying, I'm going to have to apologize to somebody here at the bank. This is really embarrassing. In the meantime, his son is still like, I gotta go. Yeah, gotta go. And so he waited and he's listening and there's no sound. There's nothing. And he's like, are you sure someone's in there? He goes, yeah, but I gotta go. So the father finally knocked on the door. Doesn't hear anything. No water running, no toilet, nothing. Knocked on the door again, nothing. And he looked at his son. He goes, are you sure someone's in there? And he goes, yes, Daddy, there's a little boy in there. And his father opened the door. And of course, there was no one in there. Said, come on, we're going, and just took the kid out. And that was it. So I don't know if he made it home without peeing his pants or not. I doubt it. But yeah, a little boy and a little girl spirit seen quite often there.
Yeah. The Willoughby Library.
Willoughby Library, like most libraries, is haunted. We actually believe all libraries are haunted. It's just a matter of, do you get the stories? Sure. So the two main spirits there are two former librarians, both who were well loved and by the community and who loved being there. So nothing really spooky and scary there, although people have said that they've seen like a tall man in a hat. We don't know anything about that. We don't know where those stories come from, but that is one of the things that they've seen. But the librarians that worked there, one of them was had a local farm, so she would bring like the little baby lambs and stuff with her to work sometimes. Okay. So I think those are good, heartwarming stories. But yeah, cool. Library definitely haunted.
What about the Homestead House?
Oh, the bed and breakfast?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about that. Shh.
Oh.
The Homestead Bread and Breakfast is a fantastic, beautiful, wonderful bed and breakfast that we collected stories of the hauntings there for years. It was once it was once a place where people would just come and they were stopping by. It, again, had many incarnations of different things. And the people who own it now painstakingly preserved it, and they did a lot of good work in it.
Is that a few streets over?
Yeah, it's right by the library.
Fred is the guy that owns that. I used to work with him. I remember he retired from where I worked.
Deanna and I don't remember what her husband's name, but they were great when Kathy was collecting stories. We used to hold meetings in there.
Yeah.
And we never said anything negative about it, just how great it was. And if you want to stay at a haunted bed and breakfast, it's got great rooms and great food. You should stay there, and it's wonderful. And the stories were nothing really horrible, just creepy and spooky.
Yeah.
And she got so mad at Kathy when Kathy's book came out.
Oh, well, there you go.
So mad. So the ghosts they're going to ruin my business. We're like, no, they're not. You could probably charge more now. Yeah. But yeah, she doesn't like it. She used to yell at us on the ghost walk, so we stopped stopping there.
Ask spirits how bad business is.
Yeah, exactly.
The Van Gorder Manor?
Van Gorder Manor. Now, that's not on the Ghost Walk, but it is down the road a little bit. And that was a home for the Van Gorder family. Actually, one of the residents of the Van Gorder family, the nephew went to, or the son, went to school with my daughter.
Okay.
But the Van Gorders were a very wealthy, prominent family in this area. And they had this beautiful mansion, which years and years later became basically an old age home.
Yeah.
And the famous story from the Van Gorder Manor is about the death kitty. The cat that could predict your death.
Oh, no.
So
sounds like a Stephen King movie.
Actually, it was like an episode of House. Remember that show, House? So apparently this cat that was just kind of lived there. It was like the resident cat. This cat would cuddle up and like to spend time on the beds in the laps of residents right before they would pass away. So it became kind of a predictor of who was going to die next.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, it became very creepy. But see, there's been some research though that cats can kind of sense it. Either like the body when it's about to die gives off some sort of heat or energy that cats just want to be comfortable and warm. So we don't think the cat was like a harbinger of doom, but somehow the cat could sense that there was going to be a change in the body.
Another reason to hate cats.
Love cats. Curse you now, Scott.
Oh, that curse. We've talked about it, the mob ties in Willoughby. There's a lot, I know that Kathy said there's a lot of underground tunnels and stuff over there downtown, and they used to do a lot of nefarious things. And a previous guest of ours, Rick Perlow, said, I mean, Cleveland was the third biggest mafia town in the nation for a while. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a lot of histories for towns like that, that's stuff that they keep out of the history books. They don't want anybody to know that. Willoughby was great about kind of hiding those ugly facts from the public.
Sure.
But Willoughby was definitely mobbed up. When Elliot Ness came to town, I'm sure Rick Perlow might have touched on this, he had his eye on Willoughby. He knew that there was some crap going on here that he had to keep an eye on. Danny Green, this is years and years later, lived in town. But in the time when the mob was really the lawless part of the mob era, there was a doctor that lived in town. I think it was Marino or something like that. Doc Marino. He lived in town, and he was the one that they would send people to when they were hurt.
Okay.
But Willoughby had a very illegal bootleg business going on here. So what they would do is the shops on Main Street or on the main drag here, people would you would think it was a tea shop or, you know, a restaurant
spice
or
shop,
a
perhaps?
spice peddler shop, maybe. But what they would do is in the basements, in the sub-basements, they had brothels and bootleg things going on, and they had speakeasies. And what they would do is when they weren't tipped off, when they didn't know if the police were coming to raid, because the police at the time were not all on the up and up, and sometimes they would get tipped off that they were going to be raided. But when they knew someone was coming, or when they sensed someone was coming, they would just move from one basement to the next, and they were all connected. And you could walk from one end of the street to the other end of the street, and this kind of like a tunnel-like system where all the basements had doors and they were connected to each other. So that was how they moved product and got people out, so they weren't arrested. Yeah, but there was, when you have mob ties, you have a lot of violence, you have a lot of illegal things happening, and people were murdered and gunned down right here in the streets.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, that wraps up Willoughby for the most part. I got a whole list of other places, but we've talked so much about Willoughby. I mean, let me touch upon a couple of these. I'm not going to go down this whole list because we'll be here for another 4 hours. But
yeah,
it's
I got
so
a big
awesome. No, please, I could listen to you all night.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating.
Let's touch on a couple of these that are close to here. The Gore Orphanage, with the legends of the Melonheads had begun, burnt down somewhere out this way, Kirtland area.
Actually, Melonhead's legend is from Kirtland, but the Gore Orphanage is, I believe, from Sheffield. And the Gore Orphanage is that right there is a prime example of urban legend. But yeah, the legend, it's been memorialized in pop culture for years. In fact, even the show Supernatural did a episode on the Gore Orphanage.
Okay.
And yeah, they had the names of the women who worked there and the ghosts, none of which is true. And the Melonheads, I don't know about Melonheads, though. There might be some stuff going on there.
Melonhead hunting.
Yes, of course you did, because that's what you did in Northeast Ohio. You went looking for Melonheads.
Melonheads in Gravity Hill. That was about the only two things.
Yeah, and I'm from Chardon, and it was at the end of Mitchell's Mills Road that I always knew of the Melonheads.
Weisner Road, too.
Yeah.
Is that near there? Because I'm not from Chardon.
They
But
tie
yeah,
together at some point.
Melonheads, and which I always thought was an Ohio legend. And then we find out there's Melonhead legends in Michigan. There's Melonhead legends in Connecticut. There's Melonhead legends in Florida. But I believe that they started here in Northeast Ohio. Just like I always thought Crybaby Bridge was from Northeast Ohio. So I went to Alabama and found out there's Crybaby Bridge there. There's one in Texas. There's Crybaby Bridges
everywhere, isn't there?
They're franchised.
Damn babies. Yep.
They're franchised.
Bunch of crybabies.
Okay. Riders 1812 in. We talked about that. Keith actually has a personal
story.
experience there.
My daughter was probably 8 months old, maybe younger.
Now is this Jamie or Mackenzie?
This would be my oldest daughter, Mackenzie, who's now 26. And my boss lived in Unionville, and he said, you know, why don't you guys come to, why don't we meet you at Riders Inn in Painesville? We're like, okay. So they took us out to dinner because we were new parents. And they said, we're going to take your daughter for the night, and we booked a room for you and your wife here at Riders Inn. And we're like, oh, wow, that's great. Knew nothing about the place. Mm-hmm. So they show us where our room is. It's upstairs. We go up there, and we're getting ready for bed, both in the bathroom. And you hear that noise like a TV going on. Like when those older tube TVs, when you turn them on, they just do that. Mm-hmm. And we're in there getting ready, and we hear that go on, and then we hear like talking like on the TV. And I look at her, and she looks at me, and I step out, and the TV's off. I'm like, I know I heard the TV came on. And she said, it did come on. And she said, you're messing with me. She thought I had a remote or something. I said, I got nothing to do with this place. I was just told I'm spending the night 15 minutes ago. And so we're like, whatever. So we get ready for bed, and we're laying in bed, and in each room there's like a journal for the people who have stayed in that room. And we're reading this thing, and I'm like, I think this place is haunted. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night.
But what was the first clue? Page 1. This place is haunted.
Get out in real big letters. Right. Some of them spelled backwards in blood. No, but
red rum.
Yeah, and I was just like, I had no idea. So then we're getting ready to leave in the morning. We made it through the night. You know, nothing was terrible. We made it, and we're getting ready to leave, and there were these twins that were the cleaning ladies there, sweet gals. And
like the twins in The Shining?
Yeah. Kind of, but like older, like a lot older. And they said, they just looked at us as we walked out of our room, and they were cleaning the steps. And we had to use the steps to go downstairs. And so we were kind of waiting, and they just looked at us almost in unison and said, how was your night? And I'm like, we're going to breakfast. The night was great. Thank you very much. And we walked down the steps, and then we were talking to the lady who owns the place. I forget her name. Elaine. Sweet gal, too. And
she's a crook.
She said some really weird things to us and asked if we had spoke with the cleaning ladies, and we were like, yeah. And she goes, oh, okay. And I just said, you know what, we should just probably go and not have breakfast, because the quicker I could get out of there, the better. And it was just a weird night. There was a weird vibe in the whole place the whole time we were there. And like I said, I didn't sleep at all. Not like tonight. I'll be sleeping really well.
Thanks to your craft beer.
Well, I'm crafty.
Do you have a story about Riders Inn?
Yes. The main spirit at the Riders Inn is Miss Suzanne. And Miss Suzanne was a...
Does she like the Tonight Show? Because maybe that's who was tuning my TV.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think she had a very pleasant life, and I think...
she wasn't much into TV.
I think her husband did her wrong, and I think that's why she haunts the place. But there's a lot of stories about the Riders Inn. We've spent some time there. We go back and visit quite often. Okay. It's a great place.
Wonderful food.
If you like staying in haunted locations, and you can't stay at the Homestead Bread and Breakfast because they're yelling at you, and you can't stay at the Riders Inn, just go down the street just a little bit and stay at the Steel Mansion. Now that is like luxurious.
Yeah, they
haunted places to stay. Okay. That place is amazing. Kathy and I do a lot of work at the Steel Mansion, and we absolutely love it. Some great
It's a great place.
great history and a magnificent place to stay. That's
Awesome.
like bougie haunted place. That's really cool.
And they just redid that probably, what, 2-3 years ago?
Oh no,
I
it's been
think?
it's been about 7 years. They it was when the woman who owns it now, Carol and Art Shamakian, when he bought it, she sent him out for groceries and he came back with a mansion. But the place was about to be destroyed. It was about to be taken down because it had a fire and it was in really bad shape. And it took them years and millions of dollars to get that place to where it's going. And the first time Kathy and I were there, she invited us to come and look at it. And there was barely a roof. There was no heat. There was the only thing original was like the staircase. And she was telling us she's going to open it and it's going to be an annex. There's going to be 16 rooms and she's going to do this, this, and this. And I looked at Kathy going, this woman's crazy. Because the place was
such shambles.
Yeah, it was in shambles.
Okay.
And God bless her, everything she said she was going to do, she did. And it's beautiful.
It's a wonderful place.
It's fantastic.
Well, I think that wraps that section up, guys. I think we've done it. I think it's time, though.
Oh no, not this.
It's time to go to battle. I'm going to prove to these guys what the scariest movie of all time is, with no doubt.
All right.
And we'll be back for this last segment of Stairway to Cleveland in 2 and 2. All right, it's time. It's time to throw down. It's battle time.
Ooh,
and tonight,
scary.
We're battling our favorite scary movies. I know. It's not even close to Halloween, but we're battling scary movies.
Oh, scary movies. I would like to make an honorable mention for scary movies.
We'll talk about it after the end, because I've got a few honorable mentions myself.
Whatever.
But Theresa, we're going to start with you because you have the oldest scary movie.
The classic, the best, the scariest movie that I have ever seen, the one that affected me like no other, is The Exorcist. And
I can't argue that.
I'm telling you, I'm not saying it's my favorite movie. I'm saying it's the scariest movie. And coming from somebody who deals with ghosts and hauntings and stuff, would really creep me out. And there's some really messed up scenes in that movie. And being somebody who was raised Catholic,
Sure.
I find it very disturbing. And the scene that sticks out for a lot of people is the levitation when Reagan was levitating, or when her head spun around and she spit out the pea soup, whatever. They showed her body walking down the steps
Spider
backwards.
walk.
That one creeped me out because I had never seen anything like that, and very little since have I seen like that. But for me, the scariest part of that movie was when the spirit or whatever it was that had possessed Reagan, Linda Blair's character, started talking to the priest in his mother's
About his
voice.
mother,
Dummy, why you put me here? Why you leave me? And that freaked me out. Because that scared me. Like, oh my God, they can do that. That scared me.
I could be on. I still won't watch that movie.
I won't. Last time
Kathy
I
won't
watched
either.
that, I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and I won't watch it again.
Yeah, I can't. So I guess if it was scariest movie, that would win hands down, I think, on this panel for sure. For
I think so.
overall scariest movie.
For creepiness and just stuff you hadn't seen before in I think most scary movies now, and even back then, were all slasher films, and the gorier the better, but just the whole storyline of that movie was just creepy.
Let me drop some knowledge on The Exorcist. Exorcist is a 1973 American supernatural horror film directed by William Friedkin and written for the screen by William Peter Blatty, based on the 1971 novel by the same name. Stars Ellen Bergson, Max von Sydow, Lee J. Cobb, Kitty Wynn, Jack McGowran in his final film role, Jason Miller, and of course Linda Blair. Despite the book's bestseller status, Blatty, who produced and Friedkin, his choice of director, had difficulty casting the film after being turned down by major stars of the era. They cast Burstyn, a relatively unknown, as well as unknown Blair and Miller. The casting choices were vigorously opposed by the studio executives at Warner Brothers. So yeah, they had problems with this film from the get-go. And it had a lot of problems, obviously, with the treatment of Catholicism. Is that the word?
Catholicism?
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
You're bad at that.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know those kind of words too well.
You're a superstar, but you can't say words good.
I can't say words good. It became the first horror film to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. One of the top 10 Academy Awards for which it was nominated, winning Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Sound. A lot of sound in that. It was the highest grossing R-rated horror film until 2017's release of It. That's pretty crazy.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
Upon its release, the film received mixed reviews from critics, ranging from classic to claptrap, which doesn't make sense. It opened in 24 theaters, grossing $1.9 million in its first week, setting house records in each theater. And within the first month, the film had grossed $7.4 million nationwide.
That's a lot of dough back in '73.
By the time, Warner's executives expected it to easily surpass My Fair Lady's $34 million take to become the studio's most financially successful film. And it's a terrifying horror film.
And there are people running out of the theaters. I think that just helped the mystique of the movie. And so for everybody who ran out and asked for their money back, that made 10 other people want to go.
I remember a lot of movies back in the day, especially the day of the drive-in movie theaters. They would say, "This movie's so scary, people leave."
Make sure you check with your doctor before watching this movie. If you have a weak heart, don't come and see it.
But this movie...
It's creepy. I'm sorry.
And to believe, Linda Blair is what, like 11 years old?
Yeah. And that's how old I was when I saw it first. It was 1980, 1981, and I just was like, I'm never watching this again. I'm 53.
I think that
watched it.
That movie, the one thing I don't like about that movie, I mean, I don't believe everything the way they show and everything in that movie, but it was still very scary at the time. But I think that movie alone has really set the standard for why people don't like Ouija boards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such a disservice because people have connected the Ouija board with evil and demonic and bad and horrible and everything since that movie. I mean, maybe it happened before, but not to my knowledge that I heard about. But, the Ouija board has nothing to do with conjuring the devil, but the way it was portrayed in that movie, that was the catalyst that Reagan ended up being possessed by whatever evil entity was possessing her.
I don't think anything made by Milton Bradley has anything to do with it.
I don't think they're like.
All right, so The Exorcist is your pick.
That is my pick for scariest movie.
My pick
Here we go.
is going to be a shocker.
Always is.
I went with the 1979 classic, Phantasm.
Oh!
Great movie. Great movie.
Love that movie. That's a Disney movie, you know that?
It is?
That was a Disney movie. Look it up. Look it up, Mr. Researcher. No, that was the first horror movie that Disney was connected with.
Really?
But Phantasm. Oh, man. Yeah. Other than The Exorcist, man, I might have to agree with you on that one because that was a good one.
It was the first movie that spoke to the preteen boy in me because I had the kid with the Barracuda he was driving around in. They're fighting off these little Jawa-like dudes and the tall man boy with the fingers and grabbing through the
My brother has tall man tattooed, right?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So Phantasm. I'm shocked you guys like my pick.
Phantasm.
Your pick.
It really came down to Phantasm or Halloween, but Phantasm.
I didn't necessarily think that was that scary.
It was scary.
Oh, it scared me.
Very scary.
When I saw it, it didn't scare me like Exorcist.
No, it's a totally different.
But I mean, it wasn't quite a slasher film, but it did have some violence in it and some gore, and I think I don't know. It was cool. I thought it was cool more than scary.
It was a cool, scary movie, and that's what I liked about it because it was a story about kids fighting back on these creatures and the tall man and the guy with the ice cream truck and
Reggie Bannister.
That's him.
It was really weird at that movie too because when I was a teenager when that movie came out, and I remember seeing it in the movie theater and then hiding in the movie theater so I could watch it again.
Sure. Yep.
And I probably saw it 4 or 5 times in the movie theater, and it was so creepy. But then looking back, I'm like, it didn't really make sense. And I mean, what are these? Where are these guys? Are they aliens?
The
are they
story makes no sense.
But at the time, I didn't care. It was so good, and those flying spheres coming at you, and
it was kind of bizarre because there wasn't really another movie like that. I don't think like Phantasm. It was just so bizarre that it was cool. I mean, this was cool.
It made cemeteries scary even in the daytime.
Right. We were waiting for the one guy to pick up the whole casket and put it in there by himself.
Yeah.
All right, let me drop a little knowledge on Phantasm before we continue on. Phantasm is a 1979 American science fantasy horror film, directed, written, photographed, and edited by Don. Oh my word, Coscarelli.
It's
Coscarelli.
Maybe you had the
These
Spanish
Italian
version.
names, man, they throw me off every time.
You should host a podcast. You're great with words, man.
Shut up, Rick.
Stop it! You're being mean.
The first film in the the Phantasm.
Quiet. He's reading his Wikipedia page.
He's stumbling through it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Scott. You know I love you. Just not when you talk.
This was the first film in the Phantasm franchise. Oh, that's a lot of F words. Here's another F word for you, Rick.
It's a PH.
F word for Fluger.
It introduced the tall man, Angus Scrim, and a supernatural, malevolent undertaker who turns the dead of the earth into dwarf zombies to be sent to his planet and used as slaves.
How did we get this one filmed? I got an idea for a movie.
Yeah, here's my pitch.
Yeah, here it is. Listen to this. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Something to his planet.
It's gonna be awesome.
One guy that couldn't talk very well that said, "I'll take it."
But anyway, shut up, I freaking hate you. All right. The tall man is opposed by a young boy, Mike, who tries to convince his older brother, Jody, and family friend, Reggie, of the threat of the tall man. Phantasm was a locally financed independent film. The cast and crew were mostly amateurs and aspiring professionals. You couldn't tell by that.
Kind of like this here.
It was, I believe what happened was it got picked up and distributed by Disney later. But yeah, and what's funny because Michael in the movie, Michael Baldwin used his own name. Reggie Bannister used his own name.
Poor Bill Thornbury got stuck with Jody.
Jody, you're going to be Jody, but you're going to drive a cool car.
It's a popular boy's name in the 70s.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm not crazy about the
6 sequels after.
Yeah, didn't really float my boat, but yeah, actually they came back and Michael Baldwin was an adult, and it's like weird stuff he was dreaming, and it was weird. He
wasn't even in the second one. They had a different person play Michael in the second one. He came back for this.
What a crock.
The ones afterwards.
But yeah, still, these are scary movies from my childhood.
Yeah. Phantasm grossed $15 million in the United States and Canada in its first 3 months. In 10 foreign territories, the film grossed $7 million for a worldwide total of $22 million. So it's a hit. 1979 numbers. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good in 79.
All right, let's move on. We'll touch on Kathy's pick. I don't know anything about this movie.
Right.
It's called The Lady in White.
Lady in White. Now, this is going to be a completely different type of movie. This is a movie that it came out in the 80s, but it was based in the 60s about a little boy who sees an apparition, and the little boy is played by Lucas Haas, and he gets locked in the school one night by some bullies, and he sees an apparition of a little girl. Basically, he witnesses her being murdered, and he doesn't see who it is that's murdering her, but he sees in his apparition like that the murderer drops something, but he can't tell if he's dreaming or if it's what's going on, but he really becomes attacked by a real living person that almost murders him. And so the story goes on that the person that was blamed for attacking him is They blame it on the janitor. There's a lot of racial things in here. They blame it on the black janitor. There's a lot of negative things said about African Americans in this movie because the 60s was very volatile.
Sure.
But the ghosty stuff in this movie, that this spirit keeps visiting this little boy, and he helps to eventually he helps to solve her murder, and then the truth of her death comes out. And the title, Lady in White, they realize is the mother of this murdered child, and she is the local ghost that is seen wandering the cemetery for decades, and she is the mother of this murdered child, and her daughter was one of 10 children that were murdered over a decade.
Okay.
So it is more of a classic ghost story. Kathy's her connection to this is she actually met the gentleman that wrote and directed the movie. It was his story, and it was based on a legend from his hometown. So it was kind of based on not a real life event. I don't think he actually was attacked and almost killed, but it was based his story that he wrote from a legend in his hometown. And the lady in white, a woman in white, that is a very common paranormal trope that we find out when it's actually in our book, we talk about a woman in white, and it's this kind of a classic ghost story. So Kathy's pick is more of a classic ghost story, but it was a box office flop, but it's kind of got a cult following now that people have gone back and they've learned to appreciate this classic ghost story. It wasn't bad. It didn't keep me up at night. It didn't give me nightmares.
Wasn't The Exorcist?
No.
It was released on...
Kind of corny when you look at it in today's,
Well, I get it.
you know, but the
It's
effects.
an 80s movie, though. It was released in April of '88. So, again, you pretty much nailed all the things that were on this paper.
It was a good watch. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I like I like classic ghost stories.
Yeah. Rick, you said you saw this movie, right?
I don't even have a TV, man.
All right.
Okay, so that wasn't Rick that said it. Must have been
The Lady in White is Kathy's pick.
awesome.
So we're going to go to your pick, Keith.
Yeah. I'm
Go
gonna tell
ahead,
you what.
tell us.
I'm gonna tell you what. And the funny thing about my pick is it was rated PG-13, and it's The Sixth Sense.
Oh,
Nah.
I just thought that was the creepiest movie I had seen in a long time, and I was gonna watch it again to kind of refresh myself on it for this, and I said, nah, I'm not doing it. I don't need to.
I've
It
seen
creeped
it
me out the first time.
35,000 times, so I can probably.
I never saw the first 5.
I just thought it was a movie that I think the acting was great in the movie. I thought the whole storyline was really good. I think it was M. Night Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan.
His first
Yeah,
his first endeavor, and I think he was like 19 or 20 years old or something silly like that when he came up with it. But it was just creepy, and everything in that movie to me was almost like it could be real. There wasn't a whole lot when I watched it, for my thinking, wasn't a whole lot of Hollywood there, even though there may have been. But to me, I mean, that was more close to real life paranormal, I think, than any other movie I had seen at the time. So
See, I'm going to agree with you on that because strictly from a storytelling point of view, like Kathy's pick was more about the story, which was great. And The Sixth Sense also was about the story. And it's one of those movies that the first time you watch it has more of an impact because once you know the twist, you know, it's not as compelling to watch 2 or 3 times. But the story in that was so good because everything was subtle, and it's like after you see it, you're like, oh my God, why didn't I see that before? What I liked about that movie, and I didn't even think about that didn't even come into my thoughts when we were picking movies, but the scene where in the very beginning where Bruce Willis's character is shot by his patient that is being
Donnie Wahlberg.
Donnie Wahlberg, yeah, which I didn't know until
played that
recently.
part well.
Who's hanging tough.
Did not know he was, his character that was plagued by the voices and everything that he was seeing, and when Bruce Willis decides to play back the old tapes of their sessions, and he plays back the tape where he left Donnie Wahlberg's character in there alone, and he hears the other voices, those are EVPs.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that until I had seen the movie over and over again. So yeah, very, very cool. M. Night Shyamalan did a great job on that. Not so much as other movies.
No,
I think that was
his peak, for sure.
Unfortunately, he peaked quick. But still, for a first movie to come out and at the age he was and that whole story, I just thought, I don't know, it just creeped me out. That whole movie creeped me out.
The thing is, if you do watch it back, there's a lot of subtle stuff in there. Like all the clothes he's wearing throughout the movie are things that he either was touching it when he was dying or died, or...
And I believe they used the color red.
Yes, they pop
in a certain way.
Certain spots.
Whenever he goes to go into the basement where he used to do his research, the doorknob is red. But what was wild about that is I didn't even realize when I saw the interaction with Bruce Willis and his wife that he was gone, because it looked like she was just mad at him and didn't want to talk to him. But then when you play it back, you know, and you watch it again, you see that. I love that. I thought that was so clever in the twist. And the only other movie I think that rivals that with the I didn't see that twist coming is The Others.
I never saw that.
I haven't either. And,
then I'm not going to tell you. The Others, that's a great movie. And again, when I watched it, it's more powerful the first time you watch it. Not as powerful to be my scariest movie.
Sure.
But because it was kind of like, I was kind of like annoyed with the bratty kids in that movie. But when you get the twist, when you see the twist, you're like, oh my God, why didn't I see that before? But it doesn't have the same effect when you watch it a second and third time. But still, very, very clever twist. And he did a good job. Still not as scary as The Exorcist, but still very scary.
I think we can all agree The Exorcist is the scariest. But let me drop a little knowledge off my Wikipedia page. Bastard. Sixth Sense is a 1999 American supernatural psychological thriller written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Released in August 6th of 1999. It's hard to believe it's that long ago. Stars Bruce Willis as a child psychiatrist whose patient can talk to the dead. The film established Shamalama Ding Dong and introduced the cinema public to his traits, most notably his affinity for surprise endings, which he's done in pretty much every movie since. The surprise gets less and less every time you do it, M. Night.
He doesn't have to do it ever again if he doesn't want to.
Yeah. Critics praise the performances, especially those of Willis Osment and Toni Collette. The atmosphere and the plot twist. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay for Shyamalan, Best Supporting Actor for Osment, and Best Supporting Actress for Collette. It was the second highest grossing film of 1999, taking in $293 million.
Jeez.
That's insane. So yeah, this apparently was released by, looks like Disney was involved in this as well. David Vogel, then president of production at Walt Disney Studios, read Shyamalan's spec script and loved it. Without obtaining corporate approval, he bought the rights despite the price of $3 million and a stipulation that Shyamalan could direct the film. Disney dismissed Vogel from his position at the studio, and Vogel left the company shortly thereafter.
So, I mean, we all came up with good movies that have frightened us. So let us know what your most frightening film is, and we'll get on to some promotion here. What do you got?
All right, well, the Haunted Housewives can be found at hauntedhousewives.com. And for our latest events, and if you want to go on the Willoughby Ghost Walk, it's willoughbyghostwalk.com. We always have ghost walks available starting in June. So, yes, they sell out in October, but you can still go on a ghost walk in the summer.
Nice.
And any of our upcoming events, if you want to come ghost hunt with us at one of our public fundraisers, or if you want to come and visit us, we'll be at the Parapsychon at Mansfield. But just check the website, check out the Willoughby Ghost Walk and our Facebook page, and can always find out what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for being here with us.
Awesome.
We had a great time.
As always.
So we've done it, kids. For Stairway to Cleveland, that's Keith.
That's Scott.
And we'll see you next time right here on Stairway to Cleveland. Bye. Boo!